Hi, this is Ibarionex from the Candid Frame, and today I want to talk about body language. I mean, it's something we've talked about before. We're photographing people out on the street, and usually they're just walking or they're on their phone. And one of the things that I'm always, striving to do is trying to get people doing something interesting. Simply just walking down the street or just talking on the phone, that's usually not really interesting enough to make my photograph particularly interesting. So, what I'm often looking for is people sort of reacting to something or interacting with someone else or something in a way that creates a really interesting facial expression or some interesting body language. So, I chose three photographs here that I think exemplify the idea of really strong body language that results in a really good shot. So here we have a shot by Vander Molentree. No EXIF information here. But here we have these two people who I don't know whether they have any relationship to each other. It seems like the figure on the right is sort of mugging for the camera because he looks to be looking directly at the camera and sort of doing this gesture with his hands. And in and of itself doesn't make for a particularly interesting photograph. People mugging for the camera is pretty common thing, and usually the images that are the result of that aren't particularly interesting or worthwhile. But what makes the shot is the guy in the background. It's his reacting to the fellow in the foreground that makes the shot really interesting because he seems to be completely lost. It seems like he has no idea in terms of what's going on. And it's the counterpoint that he provides to the figure in the foreground that makes for the interesting composition. It also helps that there's some limited depth of field being at play that's at play here. So the figure in the background is really sharp, while the figure in the foreground, even though he's doing a much more dramatic gesture, is emphasized less because they're out of focus. And the light here is really interesting. This is overhead high contrast light, the kind of light that most people would think, oh, I never want to photograph under these kinds of conditions. But I really like the light, especially the way that shadow illuminates or obscures this guy's eyes and just reveals the tip of his nose and his face. It's almost as if he's wearing a mask. And I really like the way the guy is rendered. His clothing, the tone of his skin, everything works really beautifully with him here. And I like all the elements in the background. They're not particularly distracting. Give me a sense of a place. I'm not sure exactly where this is, but it gives me a sense that it's an urban environment and probably not the most pristine and ideal one. But it provides a sense of place and context, which I think works beautifully. But it's the contrast in terms of the body language that makes this shot really interesting for me. If it were just these people singularly in a frame and not in relationship to each other, I don't know if it would make a really interesting photograph. But it's the interplay between the two that make for an interesting shot, and the body language here of both the figures really makes for a really, really interesting shot. Here's a shot by Robert Pearson-Wright made with an Apple iPhone 5S. And this is all about body language. I mean, I've photographed a lot on subway cars, and it's probably one of the least interesting places in which to photograph people because people are often just standing there waiting. They're usually on their phone, reading a book, asleep. It's not really an opportunity for interesting gesture, and compound all the difficulty of just shooting under very poor lighting conditions to make a shot. But I think Rob here does a really great job of getting this guy as he's holding the bar to support himself while he's moving through the train car. But it's this gesture of him raising his thumb to adjust his sunglasses that I think makes for a really, really interesting shot. I mean, the guy as a character is already, I think, really interesting. The way he's dressed, especially the way his tie is so high on his shirt. Obviously, he has some sense of style to him, but all of those elements in terms of his dress, his jeans, his jacket, his shirt, the tie, the sunglasses, all serve to give you a sense of this guy's personality, which I think works really nicely. And there's some other nice things here, especially the reflection in the window to the subject's left, I think is kind of cool. I think I might have liked a little more of the woman on the left. not having her face cut off in the frame, and less of the figure on the right with that sort of blue or baby blue or sort of turquoise sort of color in the frame that really doesn't add anything to it. But that's the small quibble. I think what we're emphasizing here is just the idea of the importance of the gesture, of the body language, how that really can elevate a shot from a scene that really is as ordinary as you can get, being in a subway car. Now here's a shot by Dee Horton, made with Olympus EM5, shot at 1/500th of a second at f/13, ISO 200. Now, one of the things about getting interesting body language is try to find a subject that's actually doing something. Because if they're doing something, like in this case, this guy carrying this box, or someone else doing anything other than, being on the phone, can usually result in them just being themselves. And then their body and their arms, their legs, the tilt of the head, all are going to be impacted by the activity that they're involved in. And that's the kind of body language that I think I'm always looking for when I'm walking around the street. I'm always hunting for someone doing something. And here it's really interesting because not only is this guy carrying this box, but he's moving through this very confined and narrow space as he's doing so. And so his body language is really interesting because with his right hand, he's supporting the box. And then with his left hand, he's sort of navigating the space as he moves through here. So that results in just a really, really interesting look in terms of his body against the tarp, what looks like tarps, and the space that's behind him, which looks like to be a bunch of other boxes in the frame. What makes the shot even better, though, is absolutely the quality of the light. We've got some really harsh shadows here, and really kind of split illuminates his face. The right side of his face is brightly lit, while the left half is thrown into shadow. We got the shoulder that's brightly lit. We have part of the box, but we still have some detail in the left hand and on the tarp, and we're getting some little bounce back. It looks like from the light coming from the left hand side of the frame, being bounced off the tarp and providing a little bit of fill. The result is just a really great shot, and it's really, really great that there is some hard light illuminating the background, which reveals those boxes in the back, because that creates a really nice separation between the darkness of his body and his tank top and the space behind him. And you can also see it it creates some nice definition for the right arm as it leads up to the box. Really makes for a really, really great shot. But again, the body language here is really interesting, and it's a direct result of capturing someone doing something interesting. So thanks for tuning in, but I also wanted to tell you about our Patreon effort. Right now, we're trying to gain support for the show through Patreon, and that allows you as listeners and watchers of not only the YouTube channel, but the Candid Frame Photography Podcast to support the show in donations as little as $2 a month. We have increments of $2, $5, $10, $20 or more. And what that helps to do is it allows us to keep creating great content for you on a weekly basis. And we're really trying to improve the show in a variety of different ways. And it's your support that's going to help us be able to do that. So I hope you'll consider donating and supporting the show today by going to patreon.com/thecandidframe and support the show today. And if you've never heard of The Candid Frame, well, it's a podcast in which I feature conversations with the world's best photographers. You can visit thecandidframe.com and you'll hear hundreds and hundreds of interviews, like the one we recently had with David Allen Harvey, who's a National Geographic photographer who is just amazing. But we have over 300 interviews there that will inspire you regardless of what genre of photography you're interested in. So check it out at thecandidframe.com. And if you want to contribute images to our Flickr pool, you can do so by just going to Flickr, doing a search on the Candid Frame, and ask to be added, and I'll be glad to do so. And if you are on your computer, you should have no problem doing it. But if you're trying to access our page through your phone or your tablet and you're not succeeding in being able to add yourself to the group, then you'll need to likely go to your computer because there seem to be some issues with the app version of Flickr. But other than that, Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you next time.